Okay, so you want to own a satellite. A quiet piece of hardware orbiting hundreds of miles above everyone else's problems, beaming down data, collecting a subscription check from anyone within range who needs what only you can provide. That's the picture floating in your head. Here's what actually owning one of these looks like underneath it. Start with the collapse that made this entire industry possible in the first place, because none of the rest of this makes sense without it. Launching anything into orbit during the space shuttle era cost roughly $54,000 per kilogram. Today, a Falcon 9 launch runs closer to $2,720 per kilogram, a reduction of around 90%, and reusable rocket technology is the entire reason that drop happened. Satellite manufacturing has undergone a similarly dramatic shift. A decade ago, a custom-built communications satellite could cost tens of millions of dollars and take years to produce. Today, mass manufacturing at scale has pushed per-unit costs down toward $400,000 for a mass-produced small satellite. With one manufacturer building roughly 5 of them a day on a single production line, global satellite manufacturing revenue reached $20 billion in 2024, growing 17% that year alone. And the industry is projected to grow from $21.8 billion in 2025 to $86.7 billion by 2035. That's the appeal, a market that went from custom aerospace hardware to something closer to consumer electronics manufacturing in under a decade. Now, let's talk about what it actually costs to get one of these into space. Launch cost depends entirely on how much control you want over your own orbit. A rideshare launch, sharing a rocket with several other satellites headed toward a similar orbit, starts around $5,000 to $6,000 per kilogram, with minimum payloads around 50 kilograms, genuinely the cheapest way to get a small satellite into space. But you don't get to choose your specific orbit. You go wherever the primary mission is already headed. A dedicated launch, reserving the entire rocket for your payload alone, gives you full control over orbit, schedule, and deployment, and costs anywhere from $7.5 million for a small dedicated rocket up past $150 million for heavy lift capacity. Smaller, dedicated launch providers charge considerably more per kilogram than the largest players. One well-known, small launcher runs around $25,000 per kilogram, nearly 10 times what a large-scale operator charges, purely because it hasn't achieved the same launch cadence and reusability. And launch is only the first bill. A real example from a competing satellite communications company shows exactly how capital-intensive this remains for anyone without their own in-house rocket fleet. One such company generated just $107 million in revenue in 2024, while still deploying its first generation of satellites, a ramp that required a series of additional equity raises and partnership agreements with major telecom carriers, including several of the largest wireless providers in the country just to fund the build-out, well before the business came anywhere close to profitability. That's the honest starting point for almost everyone entering this industry without an existing rocket fleet of their own. Years of capital raising and partnership deal-making before the satellites themselves ever generate a dollar of durable profit. Once a satellite actually reaches orbit, the cost structure doesn't stop, and this is the detail that catches almost everyone new to this industry off guard. A satellite has a limited operational lifespan. It cannot be repaired the way a piece of ground-based infrastructure can, and once it degrades or its fuel for orbital adjustments runs out, it has to be replaced entirely. That means a satellite constellation isn't a one-time capital purchase the way a building or a factory is. It's a permanent treadmill of manufacturing and launching new units just to maintain the same level of service the constellation already provides, forever, for as long as the business exists. There's also a real cost hiding inside the customer-facing side of this business that most operators eat rather than pass along directly. The user terminal, the physical dish, or antenna, a customer needs to actually receive the signal, dropped from hundreds of thousands of dollars for early electronically steered models down to just $349 at retail, now produced at a rate of more than 1 million units a year. That price collapse didn't happen for free. It happened because the company selling that terminal for $349 was willing to manufacture it at genuine scale and eat a real cost gap in the early years, specifically to make the service accessible enough to build a real subscriber base. Now here's the mechanism that actually explains how this business turns into real, disclosed profit. And the numbers here are genuinely remarkable for an infrastructure business of any kind. One major satellite broadband operator's connectivity segment reported $11.39 billion in revenue for 2025, against $7.17 billion in segment-adjusted earnings, before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, a margin of roughly 63%. Operating income came in at $4.42 billion, close to 39% of revenue. Margins at that level are rare for any infrastructure business, and rarer still for one that was reportedly burning significant cash only a few years earlier. Subscription pricing has climbed alongside that improving margin, with monthly plans historically running around $110 a month, and prices rising by up to $10 a month more in a recent pricing update, specifically aimed at monetizing an already large installed subscriber base, rather than continuing to prioritize pure subscriber growth above all else. The single biggest structural advantage driving all of this is vertical integration. The company operating this specific constellation is reportedly the only entity on Earth that manufactures its own satellites, launches them on its own rockets at close to marginal cost, operates the resulting network directly, and then reinvests the cash generated to fund the next generation of even cheaper launch vehicles. Nobody else in the industry controls that entire chain themselves, which is exactly why competitors without an in-house rocket fleet, like the smaller operator mentioned earlier, remain stuck, paying full market launch prices, while the vertically integrated player effectively pays its own cost of production. That advantage comes with real, concentrated risk, sitting directly on top of it. Much of this business's future profitability depends specifically on a next-generation rocket capable of carrying up to 60 next-generation broadband satellites per single flight. A vehicle that has not yet entered commercial service and remains more than 2 years behind its original schedule, with over $500 million in cascading hardware failures since 2023, including a pad explosion as recently as May of 2026. Regulatory risk is just as real. In April of 2026, U.S. regulators dismissed this same company's bids for premium direct-to-device spectrum, the exact wireless frequencies needed to expand a promising new direct-to-cell phone revenue stream, specifically and explicitly closing off billions of dollars in revenue that bulls on this business had been counting on. And competition is scaling fast on every side, with one rival constellation surpassing 300 satellites by April of 2026, and a combined constellation effort in China advancing on a similar timeline. Owning a piece of the sky doesn't mean owning it alone, or owning it indefinitely. So let's run the two scenarios honestly. The optimistic case looks like the dominant operator's business as it exists today. Vertically integrated manufacturing and launch capability, 63%, segment EBITDA, A margins, a subscription base large enough to absorb price increases without meaningful churn, and a next-generation rocket that, once it clears its current setbacks, unlocks a further order of magnitude reduction in launch cost, the same kind of collapse that made the entire industry possible in the first place. In this version, owning a piece of this specific business means owning genuinely rare, monopoly-like infrastructure economics inside an industry projected to more than quadruple over the next decade. The realistic case looks like almost every other satellite operator that isn't vertically integrated. Real revenue, real customers, real satellites in orbit, but permanently exposed to whatever a third-party rocket company charges for launch, needing repeated equity raises and telecom partnership deals just to fund the next phase of deployment, the way the smaller competitor mentioned earlier has had to, year after year, long before the constellation reaches enough scale to turn genuinely profitable. You're playing the exact same business model as the dominant player. Subscription revenue funding, a permanent treadmill of manufacturing and replacement, except every cost line runs meaningfully higher because you don't control the rocket, and every dollar of margin the integrated competitor keeps for itself is a dollar you're paying out to someone else's launch business instead. Quarter after quarter, for as long as you remain a customer of the very infrastructure your biggest competitor happens to own outright. So if you still want to own a satellite, understand exactly what you're actually buying. It was never really a hardware purchase. It's a permanent subscription to your own replacement costs, made profitable only for the rare operator who controls the entire chain from manufacturing to launch to the ground station receiving the signal, and made brutally expensive for everyone else still renting a seat on somebody else's rocket.